Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities video. I thought I would start this whole new series here, not with a suggestion, but actually with something, an article that I came across just the other day on my Google News app. It kind of ties into the theme associated with the receding water line with Lake Mead there in Nevada. The other day I was mentioning about some of the dirty secrets that are being found within Lake Mead, particularly human remains, found one in a drum barrel and then another one just found out there near the water itself. The lower the water goes down, the more that new things will be discovered. Such is the case here with a long lost town. I had no idea this existed, but it did at one point. But with the creation of Hoover Dam, it was essentially the town that never was. Very fascinating stuff. It's a nice little entry essentially into how the government sometimes works when it comes to building very large projects and how that sometimes leads to other ramifications afterward. But in fact, you're looking at a picture of approximation of it. Now, it's known as St. Thomas, and essentially it was the town that never was. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all that fascinating info here, and then I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, especially if you've been over there to Lake Mead and maybe have seen some parts of this town there. So what was St. Thomas? Well, for lack of a better term, it's a ghost town that was found there, started actually a while back, but ultimately ended up being abandoned back in the 1930s. First, let's start off with its history. It was founded originally in 1865 by some Mormon settlers. In fact, it's unique with how they founded it. They thought they were actually in the Utah, Arizona area when they did so, but as it turns out they weren't. They were actually in Nevada. So they settled there in 1865, and they thought actually they were the first settlers there, but of course they weren't. There were some what were considered ancestral plebeian, and then also other type of Native Americans there as well. They had nicknamed it as also the Lost City, and in their case, they were there first, but now these Mormons were essentially there as well, almost like cohabitating with them. It didn't last long, though, because eventually it was found out that, hey, they were in Nevada, and so Nevada officials decided that if you're going to be in that state, you have to pay taxes, and then that's where not only that, but they wanted retroactive taxes, at least 5 years, and then they didn't want to pay that. And so the Mormons decided to leave. They pretty much left the town as is, abandoned, if but for the fact that they destroyed their homes and then also abandoned their crops. But otherwise, the soil there, the actual farmland, was still pretty good. It was still pretty good for farming itself. And then finally, it was there in the 1880s that new settlers started to arrive. And when they did so, they saw that very same farmland, and they decided to stay there. I'm guessing that they were able to work out something with the state of Nevada. But yes, things grew a little bit there. It was, in fact, they got to around 500 people. There were schools, a post office, a church, garages, grocery stores, and so on. That's where things were just pretty good when it came to being there in St. Thomas, Nevada. Now it was no longer really an abandoned city. Essentially, it was a small city just out there in Nevada, just right nearby, the area that it was, what would eventually be Lake Mead. In fact, that's where things took its own downward turn. Because in 1928, then president at the time, Calvin Coolidge, he decided, let's build Hoover Dam. It was originally called Boulder Dam, but the other nickname was Hoover Dam as well. Part of that meant that they were going to cap, this dam would essentially cap water, cause water to grow around it, especially areas that were high and dry along what was called the Muddy and Virgin Rivers. And so that location would be surrounded by this water, and lo and behold, guess what? That's where St. Thomas was. In fact, they were told about it. They were even mentioned by the government that, hey, we're going to reimburse you for that property. This project is going to get done, but at least they'll be able to pay some of the residents there, obviously, for the little mishap there. This is one of those unique situations where When a government project goes into full play, it can cause after effects, what I was just mentioning a minute ago, and this is one of them there. And so obviously Hoover Dam was built, and then that's when Lake Mead, the now christened Lake Mead, started to be filled. These waters slowly but surely rose, and then over the years it would overtake Lake Mead, like it would take Lake Mead would overtake St. Thomas itself. And so that happened. That's when the residents there, those who maybe stuck out to the last end, realized, hey, we got to get out of here. This water is just going to rise and rise and rise. And it did so. At one point, the very last resident there was a guy by the name of Hugh Lord. In fact, he was caught paddling away from his home right when those rising waters were going to get right to his door. So the lake started filling in 1935. He ended up being the last resident to leave in 1938. The lake continued to fill more and more. That area there continued to just have more water until at one point at its highest peak, St. Thomas would be inundated with water 60 feet above it. So in other words, it in turn was 60 feet below the surface of the water itself. Hence the town that never was. It just completely disappeared off the face of the map. Kind of unique when you think about it, right? Here was a town again, about 500 residents one day, and then the next day it's just there underneath the water. This is from a man-made occurrence, not a natural occurrence. Like let's say another area just flooding over all of a sudden, and that's when the town is gone. Nope, this was completely the creation of the government, and then obviously all the people that worked on Hoover Dam. Now, cut to today, and the water has been receding. Obviously, there's been more of a drought associated there in the Nevada/California area. That's where the Colorado River feeds into it, but it's been getting less and less. And I talked about that in the other video about the famous bathtub rings that are seen there. Well, as the water continues to recede, that's when this town that never was is starting to come back. In fact, it's become almost a tourist attraction of sorts to go there into Lake Mead. Obviously enjoy the sights and the sounds there of the beautiful lake itself. But if you go nearby, I believe it's in the northern part of the lake. Someone might have to correct me on this, but if you go there, that's where you'll find the remnants of St. Thomas. It is there. Some of those buildings are still popping up to this day, the more and more that the water recedes. Isn't that amazing? It's like old becomes new, new becomes old, and so on. You get to see this town that basically became a ghost town. You get to see it come out of the woodworks there in Lake Mead, and then you get to enjoy it. Although it's recommended if you're going to go there to be a little bit careful. In fact, there's like signs out there as well too. It's because it's pretty not far away, but it's several miles away from a passable road. In fact, you could probably call it dangerous almost road, because if you're in a low car, then it could really do some damage to your car, then maybe even your tires itself. But if you have a vehicle that can essentially handle these type of dirt roads, then you can get there and you can come across and then see the information there for St. Thomas. Isn't that fascinating stuff? This is definitely a location I've been to Lake Mead before that I would want to visit again, just to be able to see St. Thomas or whatever remnants were and then take pictures of it too. Fascinating stuff. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, maybe some of you have been there again before and have seen this town, that'd be great to hear what your thoughts are on there, to see a literal ghost town. In fact, there is even anniversaries that happen where some of the remaining survivors of the actual abandonments can show up there as well, and then they go through the town, whatever the remnants are of the town too. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.